Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students of ILS International Learning Solutions, this is Dr. Aziz again. We are talking about the explicit business writing. The explicit or the best practices in business writing. We are going to talk now about the second model, how to practice the best practices for writing a business letter. And here we are going to talk about what the writer used, all of the writing techniques, tools in the right explanation here to help you as trainees to follow and practice. Here is the letter titled by, look here, by FRC Financial Service. This is the name of the company, and he started with the date August 1st 2005 and the address of the receiver, and he started with the salutation, dear Mr. with his name and bank question اللي colon. He started with on January 15th you arranged with us to examine the date or the data from your glass container division to see why it appeared to have had a small loss during the first 2 quarters of 2005, while the division manager said that it had made a small profit. She said she thought it had made a profit because of the increase in sales during the period. Here, the best practices used in the first bracket or the first body graph of the letter is like that. 1. The writer opens the body by reminding the reader of why he is receiving this letter now. And it contains enough detail to inform the reader, but not more than is necessary. And the second best practice here is the writer devotes the first sentence to a single thought, putting what the division manager said into its own sentence. So the writer knew that the sentences should average around 15 to 20 words, not more wordy, and that adding words would increase the likelihood that the reader would become confused. Instead of writing, she said that because of, the writer wrote, she said it made a profit directly because of, use the pronouns such as that can easily cause confusion. So writing the words referred to rather than that makes the writing explicit. That's what I like you to do. So the writer states the problem exactly as the reader explained it to him, both to allow the reader to check the accuracy of the writer's understanding and to let the reader know that the writer understands the problem. And then he comes to the second paragraph, which is the opening of the body of the letter. Our analysis revealed that although the division showed an increase in sales, the profit and the loss balance was negative. The letter or this letter explains how we came to that conclusion. The details analysis is attached. So the writer used a lot of best practices here. Number 1, in this paragraph, the writer presents the conclusion clues to the beginning of the letter so the reader can understand what is going on. So the writer here also breaks for the paragraph that states the conclusion because of importance of the statement. And also the writer mixes the paragraph ends with a statement of the contents of the letter, the purpose statements, which why I'm writing this letter. The writer explains the contents of the attachment in the introduction so the reader can decide what to do with it as he reads the letter, like a good executive summary. Then he come with an opening, or what you call it, linking or transition sentence like, we completed our analysis in 3 steps. 1. Calculating the total revenue for the first 2 quarters of 2005. 2. Assembling and totaling the expenses for the first 2 quarters. 3. Creating a profit and loss statement based on revenue and expenses. So the writer explicitly, clearly, best practice for states the steps in the analysis that the letter explains. So the steps are broken out into indented and numbered lists rather than begin presented in a paragraph style. So the writer introduces the list with the exact number of items, 3, and the name for the item steps. Blank lines separate the items in the list because they wrap the 2 lines. All words necessary to make complete, clear statements are included in the items. The writer does not group words such as articles a, and that to make the item shorter. The first item in the list refers to 2005 rather than simply this year. I mean, to make it clear, to be explicit, to be professional, to be best practice. The list items all begin with ing, paralleling. There is a parallel, توازن, في عنونة here. Words, gerunds, to be consistent, to be clear, like calculating, assembling, creating. Then he starts each one like a title for the body, like calculating the total revenue for the first 2 quarters of 2005. We used the accounts receivable records to calculate the revenue for the first 2 quarters of 2005. We found that the strong sales resulted in revenue greater than that recorded for the same period in 2004. And as we examine the record, this is the second paragraph, we learned that the number of return during the period was nearly twice the number during the first 2 quarters of 2004 when we subtraced the balance or the list. Now what is going on here? The basic practices like this. Headings are important. العناوين الفرعية مهمة جدا داخل الرسائل اللي على شكل تقرير. Headings are important in letters as well as reports. The writer uses the identical terms from the numbered list in the beginning to create headings. The heading is bolded and has blank space before and after it. The opening sentence repeats the keywords from the introduction, and the heading calculate the revenue for the first 2 quarters of 2005. And in the second paragraph, Most sentences contain no more than one or two ideas and average 18 words. Great, clear, short. Most words contain no more than two syllables. That increases the readability, making that easy. Readability of the writing text, of the letter. And what else? When we come to the less of this paragraph of this section, losses result from the large number of returned items. So we discovered that the revenue minus losses figure was less than the figure the division manager had been used to evaluate the profit for the period. What is going on here? The best practices like this. The words are ordinarily vocabulary someone might use in speaking, like general speaking. The readability level is at about grade 11, so the executive will be able to understand it easily. Your manager will be able to understand it easily. And the writer uses clear, simple, straightforward sentences with few interruptions within the sentences. Information appears in a clear paragraph blocks separated by blank lines as you look at the model. And each of these sections explaining a major point ends with a conclusion, and ending with a conclusion results in a clear, informative, consistent organization that helps the reader follow and understand that point or those points. The same things, the second section started with a heading like assembling and totaling the expenses for the first two quarters. We then sorry for interruption, we then come to this point, assembling and totaling the expenses for the first two quarters, and talk about that, and creating profit and loss statements based on the revenue and expenses. And he started with transitional words like finally and conclusion. What is going on here? We're going to look at the basic practices here. The second major point opens with the heading also. The format is clear so the reader can see the blocks of thought easily. The writer freely uses personal pronouns like we, you, me, and my. Explicit business writing uses personal pronouns as freely as they are used in speaking. The writer chooses to write using only expenses, money paid out that helps rather than that helped us, realizing that using the full statement ensures that the writer is clear. And look at this, and finally, the third paragraph opens with a heading, like the same format as used in the previous two. The opening sentence uses finally as a transition to help the reader follow the explanation and to understand this is the final explanation for the letter. So the writer refers to the attachments again because it's relevant to this explanation. And conclusion, the writer uses heading conclusions to make the conclusion statements explicit. So the heading is separated from the text by blank lines before and after. The word conclusion is stated both in the beginning and in the conclusion sections like a reminding. And please contact me if you have any question about the analysis in this letter or detailed figures in the attached profit and loss statement My phone number is 309-523-5234. So the writer ends cordially with the invitation for the reader to contact him, calling for action, including his phone number in the closing paragraph, emphasizes his willingness to talk about the analysis and the conclusion, and these are the best practices you have to do in letter. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to the second part of the letter. We will continue the third model later. As we talked here about the email before, and now we talked about the letter. Next, we are going to talk about report and memo.